Ahead on Q2, a presidential blitz.
This is completely unprecedented. We've never seen anything even close to this.
President Trump has already signed a record number of executive orders, but how much power do they truly have? We'll have the answer. Plus, one man changes his plea in connection to a 2023 shooting that left a Lockwood man paralyzed. We'll have those details. And winter kissed.
I just love being a part of winter growing and feeding Montanans greens in the winter.
One Montana farm overcoming the cold weather to constantly grow vegetables. The MTN News starts right now. Well, good afternoon, and thanks for joining us on this Wednesday. I'm Russ Riesinger. President Donald Trump promised to do a lot from the start if elected, and so far he's certainly followed through. In fact, what he's done in the first 8 days of office is unprecedented, with a record number of executive orders already signed. From immigration and federal government reform to the economy and environment, President Trump has levied nearly 40 executive orders, more than any other president for their first week in office. However, despite the signing of those orders, many may not ever take effect. We've already seen several of those, like the federal funding freeze halted. Montana State University of Billings political science professor Paul Pope says he expects that to continue moving forward.
Executive orders are not in the Constitution and are not law. And in fact, when a president issues an executive order, the only way it's legally functional is if it's attached to an existing statute, some law that already is out there, and the law provides for an amount of discretion for the president to act within. He cannot alter the law with an executive order, and he cannot delete a law with an executive order.
A day after a federal judge paused that funding freeze, President Trump has now taken that memo off the table. The action, coming without explanation, coincides with a job buyout offer to nearly 2 million civilian federal employees and the deportation of undocumented migrants. Daniel Backus has the latest this evening.
This afternoon, the president's budget office rescinded an order to freeze spending on federal grants.
Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid have not been affected. We are merely looking at parts of the big bureaucracy where there has been tremendous waste and fraud and abuse.
The directive would have affected states, schools, and organizations that rely on trillions of dollars from Washington, a spending cut plan Democrats slammed.
This has woken up the American people about what this administration is up to.
White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt says removing the order is meant to clear up confusion, adding executive orders issued on funding reviews remain in full force and effect. On Tuesday, the Trump administration sent a letter to the nation's nearly 2 million civilian federal workers, offering a buyout to those who don't want to return to the office full time.
We think a very substantial number of people will not show up to work, and therefore our government will get smaller and more efficient.
Today, President Trump signed into law his first piece of legislation since retaking office. The Laken-Riley Act mandates the detention and potential deportation of people in the U.S. illegally who are charged with theft or violent crimes.
It's a landmark law that we're doing today. It's going to save countless innocent American lives.
We're out arresting numerous cases throughout the state that were all public safety cases.
Meanwhile, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, continues to carry out targeted enforcement actions around the country. This one in Baltimore, Maryland, resulted in a series of arrests. Danya Backus, CBS News.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr., President Trump's controversial pick to lead the Department of Health and Human Services, was on Capitol Hill today for his confirmation hearing. That process taking place in a packed hearing room saw Democrats raise concerns about RFK's past comments on vaccine skepticism, while Republicans praised him, saying Kennedy presents an opportunity to improve the nation's health system.
Mr. Kennedy has embraced conspiracy theories, quacks, charlatans, especially when it comes to the safety and efficacy of vaccines.
Your commitment to combating chronic conditions that drive healthcare costs will be critical to our success.
Kennedy's hearing comes a day after his cousin Caroline Kennedy called him a predator and urged senators to reject his nomination. His confirmation process continues tomorrow before the Senate Health Committee. Breaking this afternoon, a Billings man who was described as an extreme threat to the community by a Yellowstone County judge has now changed his plea. 20-year-old Ashton Zant Glenn pled guilty this afternoon to 3 felony charges and no contest to 3 others, including 2 counts of attempted murder. Glenn and another man, David James Isaacson, were arrested in November of 2023 after authorities say they were car hopping on Canary Avenue in Lockwood when they were confronted by another man. That man, Brazzer McCabe, was then shot 3 times by Glenn and Isaacson before Glenn led law enforcement on a high-speed chase through Lockwood and Billings. McCabe has been left paralyzed from his injuries and remains in a wheelchair. In the ensuing chase, Glenn fired multiple shots at a Yellowstone County Sheriff's deputy before the chase ended when he crashed the vehicle into a parked car near Terry Avenue and 7th Street West. Glenn fled on foot but was arrested a short time later a few blocks away. Isaacson was arrested near the shooting scene in Lockwood. Glenn's sentencing is set for a later date. And we've learned the name of the suspect who barricaded himself inside a Livingston Starbucks Tuesday in a standoff with police. 34-year-old Timothy Westervelt is currently in the Park County Jail on multiple felony counts of sexual abuse of children in Yellowstone County. Westervelt, listed as a Billings resident, is being held on a $250,000 bond. According to Park County, charges include 4 felony counts, including 2 of sexual abuse of a child under the age of 16 and a felony rape charge. Westervelt was getting coffee at Starbucks just before noon Tuesday when he was identified by law enforcement as having several outstanding warrants from Yellowstone County. All customers and employees were safely removed before Westervelt barricaded himself in the store. He eventually surrendered without incident.
It's the evening drive over in Miles City. You can see the traffic lined up there with the sunshine. Pretty shot for us with the Stockman Bank weather cam there. As once we get into the areas closer to the western mountains, we're going to be talking about wind. Not so much for tonight or tomorrow, but especially by Friday into Saturday. But even in the short term, look at the winds start to pick up in the Big Timber area heading into tomorrow afternoon. We could see some 50-mile-per-hour wind gusts, and a lot of that is going to persist right into Friday, Saturday. We're going to even be talking about some 60-mile-per-hour winds, and also Harleton out of the west, 40 to 50 miles per hour tonight heading into tomorrow as well. So in the short term, we still got more of the sunshine and the mild temperatures we saw for today. That's going to continue through Saturday, but the clouds and the winds increase Saturday, Sunday, and along with that wind, we're looking at much colder air. The question mark is, how much snow will we get? We'll talk more about it coming up with the forecast.
One bill in front of the legislature is looking to change the requirements for when clergy must report information about suspected child abuse or neglect. But the bill's sponsor says she's already looking to make some changes to better respond to the public's concerns. MTN's Jonathan Ambarian has more on that proposal.
Montana law lays out a list of professionals who are required to report if they have reason to think a child is being abused or neglected. Members of the clergy are on that list, but there are some exceptions. Senate Bill 139 would limit those exceptions.
This bill is about protecting children and preventing further incidents of child sex abuse. Incidents that we've all heard about far too many times.
Currently, the law says clergy don't need to report if they learned about abuse or neglect through a statement they heard in their religious capacity or through a communication that's confidential under church law, doctrine, or established practice. As originally written, SB 139 would remove those exemptions entirely. But the bill drew concern, especially from Catholics, who said it would violate their deeply held beliefs about the sanctity of confession. Democratic Senator Marianne Dunwell, who sponsored the bill, said she worked with the Montana Catholic Conference and the bishops of Helena and Great Falls Billings on an amendment which would keep exceptions based on canon law or church doctrine. The executive director of the Montana Catholic Conference said with the amendment, the bill would be in line with what the state's dioceses are already doing. But some opponents said the change didn't resolve all their concerns about the impact on churches.
We hope that this bill serves as an opportunity to highlight the obligation we all have to advocate for the safety of each child that is entrusted to our care.
If everyone that could possibly help someone becomes a mandatory reporter, and there is no place to turn to get help without winding up in jail, then in the end they will turn to no one and continue harming children and themselves.
The committee will have to vote on whether to add the amendment when they take action on the bill later on. In Helena, Jonathan Amberian, MTN News.
When Montana goes into the deep freeze for winter, you could assume leafy greens aren't as easy to come by statewide. But one Stevensville farm is constantly growing vegetables, no matter the temperature. In today's Montana Ag Report, MTN's Emily Brown visits Winter-Kissed Farm to see just how they do it.
Soil is incredible on this side of the valley. It's not like this everywhere.
This fall, workers like Ten Ruzek spend time in the fields at Winter-Kissed Farm, stocking up the cabbage truck for a healthy batch of greens that would stay viable.
Well, generally about 120 go in a bin, but as you can see, we are now mounding it because we harvested far too many for our bins.
Binning and counting is a big part of getting ready for the next season.
I just love being a part of winter growing and feeding Montanans greens in the winter.
But growing and harvesting greens doesn't stop at this Stevensville farm when the snow flies. It actually ramps up.
A lot of fresh cut greens is what we focus on because those are in demand at a time like this in Montana.
Access to leafy greens drives Max Smith and his partner Caitlin Madden to not only offer boxes of perishable vegetables for purchase throughout warmer months.
The idea behind the winter box is to fill a void in the food system that's left when a lot of other farms decide to take a break, a well-earned break from all of the rigors of summertime production.
Smith says the idea for farming while it's freezing comes from Madden's past out east. That's why Winter-Kissed uses specialized growing spaces.
We do it in unheated high tunnels, and we just grow specific varieties of things that can stand freezing and dying and then coming back to life when the sun hits them.
Planting them at the right window in the fall so that they don't get too big and their cells are less rupturable.
And a watchful eye and dedicated team.
When certain thresholds are reached, we'll add an additional blanket, so we double up the layers, and that provides a little bit of insulation, and the soils have basically absorbed a good amount of sunlight during the day, and so they exude that, they radiate that heat a little bit.
The results are vegetables like kale, spinach, and bok choy in delivery boxes year-round.
Especially meaningful for us to provide food in kind of the leaner months, and to do it well, not just provide a lot of turnips and beets and squash and stuff like that, but to give people fresh perishable vegetables that they can expect, like 2 to 3 different greens every single week.
In Stevensville, Emily Brown, MTN News.